What's your concern level for Christian Gonzalez and his ability to be ready here for the start of the season?
Yeah, for the start of the season, it's kind of a small C concerned. Where my concern really lies is longer term because I think, first of all, he's a really important part of the team, and you could make a strong argument he's the best player in the team. He's the most talented player on the team. So to not have him at full strength, potentially, I think would be a blow to the secondary. When a guy like that, Tim, who's just so athletic and so fluid, and to have a hamstring problem, if he's not quite 100%, and at this stage, I expect him to be back practicing once we were no longer allowed to watch the entirety of practice.
Yep.
I figured he'd be back on the field when we're not watching, but he hasn't been. So I'm not going to get really concerned about opening day until next week. If he's not out there next Wednesday, that's when the work is really, really done in earnest for the Raiders. Wednesday be the first day of the week. They'll probably practice on Monday as well. But if he's not practicing next week, I'll be concerned about the Raiders. But my larger concern is, does he have something that's going to linger? And that's what happens with soft tissue injuries. That's what my major issue would be, not necessarily whether or not he's ready to go for week one.
So David Andrews, former Patriots center and soon to be a regular contributor here for Zolak and Bertrand, I think beginning next week, tweeted out this morning too, when do we start to worry about Christian Gonzalez for week one? Hamstrings can be tough, and you definitely want him healthy because you don't want him to be out there for 2 weeks and then down another 6. So it's a little concerning.
So this is why David Andrews and I, we're elite at what we do.
Yeah, both elite
at what
athletes.
we do.
Yeah.
No, but that's exactly that perfectly illustrates what my fear is that he comes back, is not quite right, aggravates it a little bit, and then you end up it's something he's dealing with all year. Whether he's missing a lot of games or not, that would be the worst case scenario. He's back for a week or two, and then he's down for 6.
Yeah.
And that happens with hamstrings, with guys that are speed guys. It's hard to keep it in check. Like, no disrespect to David and his lineman ilk, but a lineman can pull a hamstring, and it ain't the most pleasant thing to deal with. But they're dealing in tight quarters. They're not necessarily asked for long speed or anything like that. You can kind of get by, but corners, wide receivers, running backs, it's a little bit more difficult to do it.
The other concern for me when it comes to the cornerback position is just that this is supposed to be your strength with Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez. And we talk about the lack of depth that New England has. I think if suddenly that part of your defense, which you were going to be leaning on greatly, isn't there and available for you, that sort of changes the dynamic in terms of what the expectations for that defense is going to be. And I just think big picture, when you talk about what's the path to a delusional fan like myself's, their path to 10 wins, it's a really good defense and Drake May taking that year 2 jump. And if Christian Gonzalez isn't a part of that defense, it's a lot harder to picture a really successful defense for this Mike Vrabel year 1 team.
Yeah, I think they're vitally important, both Davis and Gonzalez. And Davis is a guy who also has been dealing with something throughout the summer. He's been monitored, managed, I would say, and a guy with durability issues in the past. He's missed a handful of games. He's a really physical guy. He's missed a handful of games in the past each year. So those, I would agree with you, those front-end corners I think are important for the defense. But the second part of what you said for your delusional, 11 games winning. And I don't want to call you delusional. You're optimistic. We'll call it. We at Patriots.com like to call that optimistic, not delusional. Okay? So to get there, you need the other part of what you talked about. You need Drake May to make that big year 2 jump. And if that happens, whether Gonzalez and Davis are fully healthy or not, you're probably going to get better.
617-779-0985, loaded lines. I apologize for making you guys wait. Let's knock some calls out. Let's go to Red in the truck. Red, what do we got?
Was just thinking I don't know how many years, but it seems like there's a big star every year. Micah Parsons, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, good, like guys you didn't think were going to be available. I guess what I'm asking is, who do you think might become available? I guess probably end of this year. And who do you think, if you could pick one guy for the Patriots to get frustrated and want to get out, who would that be? I'd say, I guess, not going to happen with Brock Bowers. I know he's just in his first year, but would love to see him on the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I give you a name?
They're on a lot of this. Like A.J. Brown is an example of this.
That would be my pick, to be honest with you.
But now A.J. Brown is different. He's in the area now where those guys move because they get cranky and the team doesn't want to pay him anymore or whatever. A.J. Brown got moved in his prime, like Micah Parsons just did. You know what? I don't know how I didn't really think of this, but like the Luka Doncic thing for Dallas too. Like
it's been a tough stretch for Dallas fans.
I
will say
that
this.
Throws another layer on it for me. If you're a Dallas sports fan, like that's a crusher. You lose 2 stars.
I can't compare the two just because Luka and the way the NBA is to move off of a player like that for the package they got. And now, by the way, the fact that it's going to get covered up from the fact that you won the lottery with a 1.7% chance and wound up with Cooper Flagg is now you're going to just sort of gloss over the fact that you
might say that was a bit fishy.
Luka Doncic. But more on that in a second. We have breaking news right now from Adam Schefter.
This is Breaking Sports News.
Powered by Valvoline Instant Oil Change.
On 98.5, The Sports Hub.
This is a bit of a surprise. Patriots releasing veteran safety Jabrill Peppers. Peppers still has $4.32 million guaranteed remaining on his contract for this season. He adds Peppers has started 85 games, including 26 with New England, and has totaled over 500 tackles, 7 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries in the NFL. So this is something we're actually going to talk about a little bit later, that Jabrill Peppers, it appeared, the last couple of practices have been running with the twos.
Yep.
And now he's out the door.
So I understand, there's a line of thought out there, and I talk to Evan Lazar about this a lot when we do our shows on Patriots Unfiltered. And there's a line of thought about the scheme that they're trying to do defensively that is not necessarily conducive to Jabrill Peppers and Kyle Duggar and their skill sets. They're more physical in the box kind of safeties.
It's been Hawkins and Woodson running with the ones over the last few practices.
Right, and it's been that way. See, initially it was Duggar who was removed, but Peppers was still involved with everything. And then all of a sudden, the Giants preseason game happens, and the starters are out there, and Jabrill Peppers is out there when all the other starters are basically not playing. There were a few young guys like Will Campbell and Jared Wilson started on the offensive line, but for the most part, there were backups in the game for the Patriots that night. But Peppers was out there, and that got me to pay attention a little bit, watch practice. He's not with the ones again. When they went to some of the sub packages, he was part of some of those, big nickel kind of things. But I just had a developing thought, and I was wondering if maybe, we've seen reports about them peddling Kyle Duggar, and some people have reported that one of the stumbling blocks for dealing Duggar has been his contract. He's got a bigger deal, and teams haven't been willing to take that contract on. So I started to think, well, now all of a sudden Peppers isn't playing as much at practice. Might they be sort of greasing the skids for a deal and then saying, well, we're trying to move Kyle Duggar. We still think he has something left, but it doesn't really fit our system. We think we have a scheme change, and he's not a scheme fit. Do you want Kyle Duggar? No. Huh. How about Peppers? You interested in Peppers? That's kind of the way I looked at it based on what was happening with the reps in practice. Now I didn't anticipate either one of these guys getting outright released. I think they're both too good in terms of talent to just lose them for nothing. I wonder if there's more to this story. I wonder if this is going to be another guy who went to them and requested a release. I wonder if they were looking to get money from him, like Andrew Callahan talked about with Kendrick Bourne. I wonder if this is a similar kind of situation, but not ideal, Tim, on the eve of the season to be losing players that I think are among your better players.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of your better players on the roster. I tend to agree with you here. I wonder if, number one, he wasn't going to be a starter anymore, and we've talked about the way that Kyle Duggar has sort of handled that and the way that he even played in those preseason games, going all out, saying the right things. Was there a level of acceptance there from Kyle Duggar that there wasn't with Jabrill Peppers? And then if you're going to keep both of those players who we talked about sort of being redundant when it comes to the Mike Vrabel Patriots, if you're not able to move off of Kyle Duggar and it doesn't really save you a ton of money in terms of cap space, so you just keep him for this season, do you then move off of Peppers if both of those guys aren't going to be starters. I'm a little surprised they couldn't find a landing spot for Peppers based on his production over his career. But
yeah, I think that's a fair second guess too. But I do wonder if maybe they look at it and say, well, we could use one of them. We don't need them both. You know, we could use one physical safety who can help us stop the run and maybe rough up some guys over the middle and whatnot. I still think Duggar. I think back to Duggar. I think he's always had some issues in coverage, in space, but his athleticism is pretty apparent as well. And I go back a couple of years when he was making those. Do you remember when he jumped that screen pass in Vegas for a touchdown?
It's one of about 7 highlights the Patriots have had over the last few years.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I mean, there's a handful of plays that stood out to me from that season. And I know last year was a disaster. He was awful last year, and it wasn't just about the injury. Mentally, he was not where he was supposed to be frequently. So I'm not just giving him a pass. I still think there's a player in there that should be worth working with. And again, when you're trying to establish a culture, are you telling people in the locker room that he's not one of your best 53 players? Peppers, Duggar, and they're not playing. I don't know. I mean, Mike has a plan. We'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, the captains from last year continue to go by the wayside here. Jabrill Peppers, the latest to go as he is released today by New England. I'll say this, too. Look, I know it was another coaching staff, and you bring in a new coaching staff, and you're looking to do different things, all that. But I go back to last year and sort of the lack of any building block that you got from that offseason, whether it was through free agency or the trade or through the draft, other than Drake May, is astounding. I mean, this is another guy that you gave an extension to last year and is now out the door. There were not that many players.
What I was talking about early in the show. And listen, it's a story. It's not uncommon. Coaches come in, they want their own guys. I totally understand what Mike Vrabel's trying to do. He's trying to get the guys that he's going to go forward with.
Yep.
I do wonder if maybe it's a little too much too soon. But I understand what Mike Vrabel's coming from. I know what Ryan Cowden and Mike and Elliott Wolf, and I see the vision. They're trying to get the guys that they think are going to be with them in their scheme and fit their culture. I thought that Peppers was a guy that brought a lot of energy, quite frankly, and physicality, and I would have had a role for him, but they thought differently, evidently.